What's up, CloakingDonkey here, and a couple of days ago I picked up this game called Gloria Victis, and I did pick it up because I thought, I'll make some videos about it and gain some cheap views, it'll be great, and then nobody will care about it anymore. But you know what? I actually find myself really liking this game. I had no idea that this was going to be this cool. Listen, I heard beforehand that it was going to be some sort of MMO with PvP and crafting and all that sort of thing, but I didn't really buy into it that much because with the early access thing, and I expected it to just be another one of those survival games. But as it turns out, this game is actually kind of an MMO. There are some limitations to that, don't get me wrong. It's not a traditional MMORPG, but it is definitely very much trying to be an MMO. And I think it does a lot of things really well. And I've found myself playing this game quite a bit, actually. I have really felt myself hankering for more Gloria Victis. So what is Gloria Victis? It is a PvP and crafting focused MMO, just like I was told beforehand. It's currently in early access, but as to the MMO part, I will say it is a little bit smaller in scope than something like Camelot Unchained would be, or any other more traditional MMORPG. Basically, you create a character and that character is persistent throughout the game, but then there is a long list of servers that are scattered all over the world, and they sort of act like channels, as channels would act in Elder Scrolls Online, for example. So it is a bit more of a mega server system where you don't have separate server communities. You can log on to whatever server you want, and it's not really going to change anything about your character, the position you logged out, and all of that stuff. It's just going to change the people that you play with for that session. So it really is more of a channel system. The game is definitely an RPG in that you can level up your character up to the maximum level of currently, I believe, level 100, and you gain points that you can allocate into your stats, but that is pretty much where the RPG thing ends. There are no classes and you don't really have abilities, you just have different weapons and armor, and allocating your stat points kind of determines how your character functions in combat. So for example, if you go with light armor and a bow and you spec a lot of your points into dexterity, you will be a very high damage archer that will be very squishy in melee combat and also susceptible to enemy archers. If you go for heavy armor and a big shield and a sword and you put a lot of points into constitution and strength, then that will make your character a very formidable melee fighter. Rather resistant to arrows due to your big shield, and really good at taking a beating from other melee combatants. So by spending your points and equipping items, you definitely shove your character into a certain direction, but if you're expecting classes and abilities, you are going to be disappointed. The combat in the game is interesting. If you've played Mount and Blade or War of the Roses, you kind of know what to expect because it is very similar to Mount and Blade, but with the ability to wind up your swings to give them more strength, like in War of the Roses. In general, I will say that the combat doesn't feel quite as crisp as it does in War of the Roses, however, which is why that comparison falls a bit flat. It just has similar qualities in some of its mechanics. But the Mount and Blade comparison is very apt because Mount and Blade also has some very specific problems with animations, and I think the biggest issue with the combat in Gloria Victis is that the animations are very stilted and could definitely use more work. But that is early access, so let's hope that by the time this game launches, and let's hope it launches, we will see better animations that actually make the combat a little bit more fluid and less sort of stilted. The world is very much a fantasy world, but the characters are more of a medieval army. So there is no magic, there are just soldiers. So you really only get to choose between being a melee fighter or an archer currently. Who knows, maybe this will change in the future, but for now, that is what it is. PvP is obviously the main focus of this game because the entire map is pretty much PvP enabled. The only safe places on the map seem to be the starting towns for each faction. But the closer you get to the enemy's starting town, the more you will encounter high-level enemy guard NPCs. Now I will say that levels in general when it comes to NPCs don't play that much of a role. Sure, they will do more damage, but if you are good at the fighting system, you can absolutely take down higher level NPCs. I found myself killing level 25 to 30 NPCs with my level 10 character pretty easily. But then again, I've also played quite a lot of Mount and Blade Warband, so maybe that is part of the reason why. All across the map there are various points of interest that act as capture points for the factions. Capturing one of these points will give you reputation with your faction, but it will also do other stuff depending on the location. Some of the points, for example, might unlock resource-rich areas, like the mines of Dunfen or Limetown, for example, that have a lot of mining nodes inside, or the farm areas that have a lot of crops around them. And then there are also capture points in higher level areas that give access to better monster grinding spots, or even give you access to vendors for crafting recipes and all sorts of goodies that you can't otherwise get. So there's plenty of reason to take on these capture points, and they change hands pretty constantly during the day. Now the other big pillar of this game is absolutely its crafting system. The crafting system is very, very in-depth, so if you really dig crafting, there's a lot to find in this game that you'll like. As far as I can tell, apart from a bit of starter gear, there really isn't much in terms of gear that you can buy from vendors. So most of the gear, it seems, comes either from monster drops or from crafters, which is pretty fantastic. You see a lot of people constantly trying to buy and sell their wares in the global chat, and the economy seems to be alive and well. Currently there are two factions, the late medieval England-inspired Midlanders and the Viking Age Danish-inspired Izmir. There are, however, two more factions planned, one of which will be more of a Saracen faction, and the other looks to be inspired by Hunnic tribes. I have to say what caught me off guard the most about this game is that it really seems a lot like what is planned for Camelot Unchained, except with PvE and without classes or abilities. So you could say it's not really like that, but you know what I mean, right? On the website for Gloria Victis there's also some stuff about building structures, but I haven't really seen any of that in the game yet. Maybe I'm just not far along enough to have really seen it, or maybe it's just not implemented yet and it's just a planned feature for the future. Either way, the developers seem to be really passionate, and the game definitely has a lot of potential. Graphically, I have to say it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think the environments are absolutely stunning. Fidelity-wise, they're not too fancy, but they are very beautifully realized with the means the studio had. I especially like the tree foliage blowing in the wind and the weather effects. They really do it for me, and I think the atmosphere of the game is fantastic. The characters, on the other hand, are not that pretty yet. I do think there's gonna have to be some more work put into the character models, their lighting and their shadows, and especially their animations. But yes, I do think this game actually has a lot more potential than I initially thought it would have. I went into this game rather cynically, and now I find myself playing it all the time. Right now, while I'm making this video, I'm already thinking about what I will do when I play next. So that is a really damn good sign. Now remember, however, this is an early access game, so like with all early access games, there is no guarantee whatsoever that this will ever be a finished product. It might just be a perpetual alpha that gets patched every now and then, just like a lot of the other survival games that came out in the last couple of years that will probably never be finished games. But if you ever see it in a sale, or if you don't mind spending 20 euros on a game that you can spend 20 to 30 hours at least with, then you could really do worse than this game. I really think this game is pretty neat, and it offers a lot of things that just have been kind of forgotten in MMORPGs in the last couple of years, namely a cool world instead of just quest hub after quest hub after quest hub. Oh, did I mention? This game does not have a quest system per se. There are these sort of area quest events that remind me a lot of public quests in Warhammer Online, and they do offer some neat experience boosts, but a lot of the experience you'll make comes from just killing stuff, or building stuff, or harvesting stuff. Alright guys, that's me done with this video. I'm gonna log back in because I want to push my armor smithing a bit more, but until then, I've been the Cloaking Donkey, and I'll see you in another video.